York City mayoral race starting to take shape after yesterday's primaries, but one filmmaker has captured the decline of the Big Apple from the residents' own experiences. Watch this.
The city has changed because they don't care about the small business, number one.
My kids, trying to raise them in New York City is almost impossible. The crime, the homelessness, it's outrageous.
You solve the quality of life issue in New York City by showing people that they matter.
All right, that's a snippet of it. Joining us to discuss, Matthew Taylor, the documentary filmmaker with a new series out on YouTube called This is New York. That was part of it. We're also joined by our panelists, Melanie Burkholder, Ted Harvey as well. Matthew, thank you for coming on today. Again, a lot of people who don't live in the New York City area might expect it to be what we think of, typical New York City, Broadway, the lights, Times Square. But it's different right now, of course, with all these businesses that were forced to close down and people leaving the city as well. Talk to me about what inspired you to produce this series.
Well, I'm a longtime New Yorker. I love New York. I think it's one of the greatest cities, if not in the country, in the world. And the city has taken a real dark turn. And what we wanted to do was capture the voices of the people who live in the city, and not just Midtown Manhattan, all 5 boroughs from Brownsville to South Bronx to Staten Island. And we captured them in This is New York to really get a flavor for the environment and how it's changed and how it could be heading in a bad direction. Yeah,
you talk to the people, talking to the New Yorkers. That's where you're going to get the answers, not just the politicians who think they know exactly what these people want. We've heard about defunding the police specifically from one mayoral candidate, but it turns out based on what we're seeing so far, at least the numbers coming in, that the one who was in favor of law and order is coming out on top, that being Eric Adams. With these numbers coming in, top of the list, they're 31% of the vote. Still waiting for the final results coming in, again, following that ranked choice voting. But Matthew, when you talk to New Yorkers, what was their top concern? What were their major issues that they'd seen go on with the city?
Well, crime was the obvious one. Crime and safety. New York City needs to be safe in order to build anything else, whether it's businesses or schooling or anything. But of course, quality of life is also a big one. It's expensive. It's punishing. It's always been punishing to live in New York City, but now you don't get any reward or benefit from being there. And so add COVID to that and the decline, it's just not a wonderful place to be anymore.
Yeah, Ted Harvey, I know I live here, so I've seen it over the course of the pandemic, but this is some sad news, right? It's a kind of disturbing realization for some people who might not be aware of exactly what's going on in the city, and it might impact whether or not they plan a trip to New York City.
You bet. And I think you're seeing this all across the country in big blue cities all across the country. Right now, the tourism department for Portland is advertising and encouraging people to come to Portland. And you got to ask, why would tourists go to these big cities when they are, encouraging violence by defunding the police? De Blasio did defund the police in New York, and they're doing it all across the country. They are incentivizing people to be homeless by saying that you have a freedom to stay, which is what they did here in Denver. And now we have tent cities all over the city. The Democrats in these blue cities are pushing such radical liberal agendas that they're creating hellholes for their constituents. And why would people want to stay there? And I've been all across the East Coast, and people are leaving the big cities in droves and running up the property prices in surrounding states because nobody wants to be in these big cities anymore.
Yeah, and just to be clear, the packed brunches on Saturday that you see in Midtown Manhattan, the people who live in that area have a much different experience than those who are living in this high crime part of the city. And I do want to make that difference there. Melanie, your thoughts on the city, where it's headed, and whether or not the next mayor of New York could get it back to where it used to be?
Well, this is just another example of a failed Democrat policy, and an inhumane one at that, because listen, homeless people are people too, and they have names and they have a reason that they're there, and they need a hand up and not a handout. And until Democrats really realize that those policies work, that the hand up works and the handout doesn't, you're going to continue this cycle. And it is a cycle. Here in Carlsbad, they call it the churn at one of the nonprofits that I work with. And it is kind of a churn. You kind of get stuck in a cycle of violence, of crime, of homelessness. And it's really sad and inhumane. We treat our animals better than we treat people on the street. But at the onset of the film, the core of this matter is small businesses are failing in New York, and we know that small businesses make up the great American dream, and that's unfortunate for the Big Apple.
So true. Matthew Taylor, you can check out his series, This is New York. It's on YouTube. Enjoy it while you can. Matthew Taylor joining us. Thank you. Our panelists, Melanie Burkholder, Ted Harvey, our panelists for the hour. Thank you all so much. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hey, I'm Rob Finnerty. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please join the conversation in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, too. Hit the bell icon to be alerted to breaking news. And remember, there's a whole lot more on Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news network. Newsmax TV, where real news for real people.